Hey guys, it is Dwayne here from DewyHQ, and today I've got a special video for you guys. And if you guys haven't noticed from the title, I'm actually doing a Persona 5 promotional video 3 analysis and breakdown of the trailer because I'm super excited from this game. Like, the hype is way off the charts. Ever since I got into the Persona 4 anime series, started watching that, I was gotten really into the games, picked up Persona Q, and then played Persona 4, Persona 3, and now I'm super stoked for Persona 5. And if you guys don't know, it was meant to come out this year, 2015, but at the end of this trailer they did say it comes out summer 2016 for Japan, so that means it's going to be our winter, so June, July, August, in that time span, hoping for like a June release date, but the more time they polish it, the better product they're going to get. So let's jump into this analysis. Now, in the beginning of the trailer, we see 5 white lines, and this is probably just a small, subtle indicator to say, you know, Persona 5, nothing special here. But the main thing we wanted to spot is that in the running silhouettes, which is presumably the main characters, which they are, we see a 4th person besides Morgana the cat. Now, I'll get in more into the 4th person as we get down the track. So we then have an obscure change of scenery where we see our protagonist running down the side of a pyramid, and we can also make out that our 4th protagonist is joined with the rest of them in this scenario, but we don't actually get a close-up. We only get a close-up on Ryoji and Morgana, leading to a humorous throw, and then we get kicked into gameplay with a smooth transition showing off the Persona 5 logo. Now, there's a few things we can analyze in this scene. This seems to be early on in the game, as the date shows it is the 19th of the 4th, which is the starting date for Persona games is roughly the 11th, which has been proven in the first gameplay trailer, which I think was PV1. But analyzing the map, we have many things to do. We can see many icons which indicate where the protagonist can go, or shops they can visit. One being a movie theater where you can possibly raise stats, similar to Persona 3. We also have a coffee shop, maybe that's a place to raise charm. We have a general clinic. This is probably a place where you can buy medicine and healing items for your crew. Another thing to note is we have a general shop, but this is probably where maybe you buy your non-specific healing items, or maybe even weapons. Maybe, not sure. There's not much to go on just on the little shop icon, but we can see it is a grocery store. We can also see a recycling symbol down the bottom. This possibly might be the weapon store, as you know, you're recycling the materials from the shadows and you're converting them to something new. That's just an idea to throw out there. We can also note there's an unknown kind of icon in between the shop and the vending machine icons. Now, the vending machine icons are located between the coffee shop and the unknown icon. We can actually analyze that they're vending machines if we go to the start, the first frame where you can see the vending machines in the corner of the frame. Also, to be smallly noted in this scene is you can see Morgana in her cat form in the protagonist's bag, which is pretty neat. You can see that in PV1 and PV2, but that is just something to note, that the Morgana seems to follow the protagonist everywhere. You can even see Morgana in the train station. Not much to analyze in the train station aside from the change of date. Now, as we open up into the raining scene, we will see that the date has changed to the 22nd, Friday, another early date. But we can see this is a much larger environment where the protagonist can walk around and examine more things and talk to more things. Now, we have a couple of new icons here. We have stairs that probably lead to new locations or out of bounds areas, maybe places we just can't go yet, but perhaps dungeons. This could possibly lead to the train station, or perhaps many other obscure places, maybe to school, maybe to friends' houses, we don't know at this point. Other icons of note is that there's an icon to the top right here, and it seems, from what I can analyze, it's either a dart or something entirely new. I'm pretty confident that it's a dart though, and it looks like maybe it's a bonus skill game, or maybe another way to raise your skills. And as we push on throughout the trailer, we can see a little icon of a dog statue Now, I know there's a famous dog statue in Japan, the Shibuya Terminal. I'm not kind of sure on the name, but perhaps this is a place to visit with social links, or maybe strengthen our social links on, similar to the shrine in Persona 4. So we actually get a first look at the school environment, and aside from that short little chalk throwing clip in one of the PVs, we can actually see that the main protagonist class is 2D, as it's the only class actually written on the minimap, which is interesting because most classes only went up to C in the previous Persona games. The other things we can take note in this scene is that there's 3 characters in this scene that are detailed more than the other average students, which are the 2 boys in the athletic track outfits and the girl in the back. These are potential social links or maybe quests. I'm leaning towards more social links, as the athletes could possibly be your strength, maybe they're the sports club, similar to Persona 4, and the girl can maybe be one of the culture clubs, maybe art or music. Now, as we get a look at the outside scene in this school, we can see that the school is a pretty large environment due to the minimap, and we can see a few new icons, including vending machines and possibly a cafeteria. There seems to be 3 more outline students that have more higher detail than the other students. These are potential more social links or potentially quests. So in the first frame of this scene here, when the protagonist checks his phone, we can actually get a clear look at the classroom. There's not much to go on here, but we do get a clear look and we get to see what's going on and what kind of environment the protagonist learns in. There's not much to note about the text message conversation, as it is in Japanese and I can't read Japanese, sorry. But we can gather this might be a new way to talk to social links, or perhaps even strengthen the bonds that you create throughout the game. Shortly after, we relate to another cutscene where the protagonist and Ryoji come across the first dungeon. Now, my theory is that the first dungeon is not the casino as we see in the Persona 5 original trailer. I feel that the casino is potentially a prologue chapter to the game, and that is where perhaps our protagonist gains his persona, or this is like a simple tutorial mission for combat in Persona. Now, as Morgana summons her persona seems to be of Puss in Boots, which is known in English, which kind of follows a cat that is kind of like Zorro in a way, which actually matches the European theme of Personas so far. And I'll get more into detail with that when we see the other 2 main characters' personas. This seems to be within the first dungeon, or maybe the first visit to the dungeon, so I'm guessing Ryoji and Anne gain their personas in the first dungeon, and there's further evidence down the track to prove this. Now, there's not much to say within this next scene, as this is only a small reference, but this eye is actually the eye that's shown at the end of the promotional video number 2, which is on the Dancing All Night disc, which I can't actually show you guys. It pops up with Steal Your Future Back, and this could possibly relate to the antagonist, or maybe someone that's trying to get into the protagonist's head, or it has something to do with the Velvet Room. I'm kind of leaning towards more antagonist, but the Velvet Room with the womanly voiceover, this might actually lead the protagonist to the Velvet Room the first time around. Now, as we open into the next scene, which is the 16th of April, we get to see a load of different nighttime kind of events, and it seems to be a different environment from where the protagonist has been before. Again, Morgana is still in the backpack, as always, but we can also see that there's various vending machines, a movie theater. We also notice that there's a detailed person standing by this black car, and this is probably a new social link. I'm leaning towards Devil, because this is a nighttime kind of scene, and maybe these are the quote-unquote sleazy people and with their low morals, etc, etc. There's a simple grocery store. Further up from that, there's also a flower store. I'm not sure what to make of these 2 areas. Maybe these are just places to visit with social links. There also seems to be a bar up and around the corner due to the map of a little cocktail picture, but there's not much to say about this because we don't get round to that point. Now, in the next scene, we see our 4 main characters at the moment running along a rooftop on the 18th of April. So the first dungeon takes place within the first week of the game. Now, the one thing to note here is that all the characters have their heist outfits. Unless they will appear in the prologue, I can't be sure to say exactly what happens here. Assuming that all our characters have their outfits, I'm assuming they have their personas at this point. As we jump into the scene afterwards, we get a new look at a different dungeon, and this seems to be a museum. This seems to fit with the theme of abstract art being a museum. Now in this scene we also get to see the different running animations between the characters. The main characters, like the protagonist, seems to have a splash effect. Anne seems to have a skating type of effect. We can't really analyze Ryoji's, but we get to see a humorous version of Morgana as it has just a spinning circle, which is quite amazing because it is a cartoon cat. Now this is what leads me to believe this is the second dungeon, as it's 1 month after the first dungeon, and we also get to see that we're diving into paintings, which proves the point that it's possibly a museum, and this is the gimmick, so to speak, for this level. In the next scene we see Anne awakening to her persona, where she seems to be in danger and her mask appears onto her face, and then she proceeds to rip it off her face, which seems to be the new style of awakening to the personas. And as we can see, Anne's persona seems to be of a Harlequin character. Shortly after we see Ryoji's persona, which is a pirate themed persona. Now my prediction on this is that this is actually Captain Ahab from the novel Moby Dick. If we're still leaning on the European theme, this would highly support it. The only other expectations I can have of what this persona would be called is either something to do with Blackbeard or maybe a famous legendary pirate. Also in this scene we get to see that Ryoji's only just awakening to his persona, which also seems to be within the palace environment. It's hard to see with all the blue flames, but we can kind of tell that this is in the same sort of environment that Anne awakens to her persona as well. Shortly after we see the 5th mystery character. Now this character hasn't had a name or been officially revealed quite yet, but we did get a glimpse of him within the first PV as he follows a kind of raccoon-esque or fox motif. We also see him summoning his persona. I feel that this person is definitely an antagonist at first and then joins our group of heroes shortly after. Interestingly enough, he changes outfits within this scene. I'm not sure if these two scenes are related to each other or directly follow, but it could be potentially cut together. I'm not entirely sure on what his persona name could possibly be, but it seems to follow a traditional Japanese warrior. And as we can see, his persona summon a gust of wind, but we can't tell if this is either an ice attack or a wind attack due to all the blue in the scene. Shortly after that we get a new look at the all-out attack involving the guns. Now this seems to be a new type of all-out attack, as the stylistic cutscene does not come beforehand. It may have came beforehand and they may have cut it out, but we get to see a different style of all-out attack. Also to note is that we can also spot the personas Legion and Moat here. Shortly after that we jump into a scene which quite possibly takes mid-game. As we can tell from the calendar, this is the 28th of September. This is a huge jump from what we've seen from April and May, and this seems to take place in a dungeon of the observatory or space station environment. If our characters tackle one dungeon a month, this would probably be the 5th or 6th dungeon in the game. There's not much to note here besides the large environment. Shortly after we jump into a scene that seems to take place in a vault or a bank. I feel that this is probably the prologue mission, which takes place when the protagonist is solo. This is further evident down the track. I feel like this scene takes place within the casino, which is where the protagonist is supposedly on his own. Shortly after that we get an idea of the different types of enemies within the museum, which is potentially the second dungeon. Shortly after we cut back to the first dungeon again, where we can see the first dungeon's final boss. He seems to also have a specialized move which seems to be hitting a volleyball into our team. We can see our protagonist standing within the bank, which I believe takes place within the casino, and this is potentially when he awakens to his persona. Shortly after we see a new glimpse at our white masked character. This is probably taken within the pyramid dungeon due to the sandstone backgrounds. As we flick back to Anne's persona, we can analyze that she is a fire user, and Anne will probably be our main fire user throughout the game, similar to how Yukiko was within Persona 4, where we see Ryoji fighting a sandstorm. There's not much to note here, but this probably takes place during the pyramid dungeon. Flicking back to the 18th of the 4th, taking place within the palace dungeon, we see that the protagonist and his companions have been turned into mice. We can analyze this as they distract a guard and they turn around and they are wearing the corresponding masks on their face. I'm not entirely sure what this might do apart from distract the guards. I'm not sure how our characters get into this predicament, but it seems quite humorous. So we get a confirmation of when this pyramid dungeon probably takes place. We can also see our white mask persona user, as he seems to be running with both the protagonist, Ryoji, and Morgana. Soon after we get to see the main protagonist practicing at baseball. This either might be a fun minigame for building skills, or potentially this is the sports club that our protagonist can join. Shortly after, we see our protagonist working out with Morgana, but the one thing to note here is that it's the 22nd of September, right before that electronic dungeon. Heading back to the palace, we can see how our new personas are obtained. They come in the form of masks, and this persona specifically is Ganesha, which is usually a high level persona in late Persona games. So this might mean that this persona might get dropped down to a lower level and act as a lower level wind or physical persona. As we can see the protagonist gaining another persona, this essentially means the wild card has been confirmed. Soon after, we can see Arsene being summoned by the protagonist. This seems to be a late cutscene in the game, or potentially this is at the end of the palace cutscene as the sun rises. Towards the end of the trailer, there's not much to analyze. These just seem to be cutscenes that are dispersed throughout the game. I can't analyze a lot of it considering it's all in Japanese, but this is just a taste of what we can see throughout the game. The main things we can pick up is that the AND cutscenes seem to take place either very early on in the game, or perhaps towards the climax of the game, where they are questioning if what they're doing is correct or morally right. Another cutscene of note is where we see our white masked persona user without the mask, as he matches the description of the 5th unknown persona user. Another cutscene that analyzes that the protagonist gets captured at one point. This is possibly by the antagonist or potentially the police. Lastly, we see a wall of text in Japanese. This is just a list of all the voice actors that are acting within the game. Again, not super helpful to us who speak English. But we've come to the end, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to stay tuned for more Persona breakdown videos that I may make in the future. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for tuning in for DewyHQ. See you next time.